Practicing for my own marriage. Just seeing how long I can eke that out.
That is Max, standing in a hospitality unit packed with journalists, hours after signing a contract that keeps him at Red Bull until 2030. Not, I never considered Mercedes. Not, McLaren were never real. Closer to retiring. And if you were here for our last video on that exit clause, you already know what we told you the moment Silverstone was done. That clause was going live. It went live. He stayed anyway. Then, within about 6 hours, the paddock filed its verdict. Story over. Today, we're breaking down 3 things. What Max actually admitted about the last 8 months, worse than anything the rumor mill invented. Why one Sky analyst read this contract completely differently to everyone else. And the single question Laurent Mekies was asked on camera, in front of the entire press pack, that he point-blank refused to answer, the one that decides whether any of this is settled at all. Let's get into the details. Start with the thing everybody skipped past. The exit clause in Max's old deal was not theoretical this year. It was live. The condition was simple. If he was outside the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship at the summer break, he was free to go. And after the British Grand Prix, it stopped being a question of if it became mathematically impossible for him to finish top 2 by the break. The door didn't creak open, it swung. And if you haven't followed every twist of this season, here's the 30-second version. Max's contract already ran to 2028, but written into it was a get-out that only unlocked if the car was bad enough. This year, the car was bad enough. That's why every team on the grid spent the summer circling him. So for roughly 6 weeks, Max Verstappen was, in practical terms, the most available driver in Formula One. His previous contract ran to 2028. He could have walked from it. He signed a longer one instead. And here's where the coverage went wrong. Every outlet took that sequence clause opens, Max re-signs, and drew a straight line to loyalty. Red Bull love him, he loves Red Bull, story closed, see you next season. But loyalty is a conclusion, it's not evidence. And when the man himself was handed a microphone that same morning and asked what had actually been going on in his head, he did not describe a loyalty dilemma. He described something much darker. So if the clause was genuinely open and he genuinely stayed, what was the alternative he was weighing it against? Not McLaren, not Mercedes, nothing. Max revealed on Thursday that after the opening races of 2026, he told Laurent Mekies directly not to come to him with any questions about the future, because he didn't know whether he wanted to stay in Formula One at all. Read that again, because it is the single most important sentence of this entire week, and it was buried under headlines about silly season ending. The team principal of Red Bull Racing was told by his own driver, "Don't ask me about next year. I don't know if there is a next year." This is a man who has won 71 Grands Prix, 4 World Championships, who lost a 5th by 2 points in Abu Dhabi last year after one of the great second-half comebacks. And 4 races into the new era, he was telling his boss to stop bringing it up. Then, look at who got involved. Stefano Domenicali, Formula One's commercial boss, held repeated conversations with Max about his criticisms and about the direction of the sport, not about a transfer. About whether he'd keep racing. Think about how abnormal that is. The commercial head of the entire championship, personally working a retention problem for one driver. That has not been true of anyone else on the grid. So if the sport itself had to intervene to keep him, why did almost every headline on Thursday treat this as a routine contract renewal? Because the press pack had already decided what the story was before Max opened his mouth. Formula One's own analysis called it no surprise. Red Bull love him. He loves Red Bull. It's become his team. Autosport called it the only logical outcome of the past few months and dismissed the McLaren chatter as largely without substance. None of that is wrong, exactly. It's just the story you write when you're looking at a press release and a deadline instead of listening to the driver. And here's the tell. One analyst broke ranks. Chandhok on Sky said he was not surprised Max had committed, but he was surprised by the length. He'd expected a deal to the end of 2028. 4 years, in his reading, means Max believes in the long-term feasibility of the engine project. That's a genuinely different claim. Chandhok isn't saying Max stayed out of affection. He's saying Max made a technical bet, and the duration is the evidence. You can argue with that, but it's the only take in the whole cycle that treats the contract as information rather than as a hug. So, if the length of the deal is the real signal, what is the year 2030 actually telling us? One more thing the chorus glossed over. 2030 is not a random number. It is the end of the current regulations cycle, the cycle Max has spent this entire season calling anti-racing, the one he compared to Mario Kart. And he said it himself. The year he signed to leaves the door open for a potential V8 return. He's willing to accept the current cars for now, not fantastic, in his words, but he still loves racing. So the contract expires precisely at the moment the sport might sound like a sport again. He also repeated a promise he first made while Dietrich Mateschitz was alive, that his goal was always to finish his career at this team, and he thinks they're getting close to it. That is, a man planning an ending, not a dynasty. So if he's committed through the exact window where the rules might change back, what happens when you look at the part of this deal nobody has actually seen? Here is where it falls apart. The only thing that determines whether Max's future is genuinely settled is whether the new contract still contains a performance clause. If it does, he can be back on the market next summer or the one after. If it doesn't, he is locked in for 4 seasons, regardless of what Red Bull builds. That is the question. It is the whole question. And on Thursday, at Zandvoort, 2 credible outlets sat in the same press conference and came out with opposite answers. Planet F1's writer reported that Max clarified the clause remains, that he gave no ground, and probably took a pay rise on top. GP fans reported the opposite, that the clause status is unknown, that it had been the sticking point in negotiations, Max wanting a raise, Red Bull wanting the clause gone, and that this new deal could change absolutely nothing. Same room, same day, same driver, and when Mekies was asked, he shut it down. He said the substance was the extension of the partnership through 2030, and everything else was the team's business. He knew exactly what he'd been asked. He answered a different question on purpose. So, the paddock published speculation over on a story where the team principal declined, on camera, to answer the only thing that would end the speculation. So if even the people in the room can't agree on what was said, what exactly did we all just accept? Let's put the receipts on the table, because the results context matters here. Max signed this deal from 6th in the championship, 109 points. 110 behind Kimi Antonelli. 0 wins from 11 races, his first winless run since his rookie year in 2015. 4 podiums all season, though 3 of those came in the last 4 races before the break, which matters. Red Bull sit 4th in the Constructors' Championship on 177 points. No victories. And the team he re-signed to is not the team he won 4 titles with. Christian Horner, gone. Adrian Newey, gone. Helmut Marko, the man who made him a Red Bull Junior, gone. Jonathan Wheatley, gone. Will Courtney, gone. By the time this contract expires in 2030, Max will have spent 15 seasons with Red Bull. It would be the longest single-team stint in the sport's history. So, 15 years, 4 titles, 71 wins, and a paddock that packaged all of it into a 6-hour news cycle about silly season being boring. And they still haven't told you whether he can leave, because those terms are going to surface. They always do. And on Sunday, the 23rd, he drives the last Dutch Grand Prix Zandvoort will ever host a sold-out home crowd, 3 days after he signed away the one piece of leverage he had. We're covering that on Monday. And later this week, we're going after the other half of this, the actual reason Red Bull was never truly at risk of losing him, which has nothing to do with the car and everything to do with what they let him do when he isn't in it. So here's where we land. The exit clause opened, properly, for the first time. Max was free. He signed a longer deal instead and then told a room full of journalists he'd been closer to walking away from the sport entirely than to walking down the pit lane. The people who make the rules had to talk him round. And the one question that would tell us whether any of it is final got refused on camera. Our view: this is not a closed story, it's a paused one. And if you're tired of watching the best driver alive get summarized in 6 hours by people who didn't listen to a word he said, subscribe. Because the moment those contract terms leak, we're covering it that day, not the next morning. Now tell us, is Max locked in until 2030, or did he just buy himself another summer of leverage? And be honest, do you trust this deal, or are we doing this again next August? We'll see you at the next green flag.